Good morning. It is 12 after 7 on the 7th of November, year of our Lord 2025. And I am 12 minutes late to, if anyone saw my note on Substack, that I was going to be doing these Friday mornings now. So if you're on your way to work and you're listening to Spotify, thank you. But if you're on Facebook or YouTube, you're not here yet. But I encourage you to be. If you are one of the many people that download this podcast, thank you. Will try to, and sometimes and this is why sometimes the pre-recorded ones are better because I speak slowly. So it doesn't look like anybody got up with me or they're on their way to work. But eventually we'll see if this is a better time to live cast and if I can more consistently get something up by Friday morning, I will. But unlike some podcasts, I still have a day job. So I've got to get this done and get into work. But welcome. This is the Slava Heroyam podcast, where we talk about the individual heroes of Ukraine. We talk about the organizations that provide humanitarian aid and are on getting that aid to the front lines, usually food or medicine or evacuating civilians, sometimes weapons, sometimes helping Ukraine stay in the fight. If that's what you're interested in doing, like me. But humanitarian first, we celebrate the lives of heroes lost and those lost to the Russian terror campaign and the human safari. And finally, we have a hero of the week. Now, my hero of the week that I wrote about for the last two writings has been the two commanders of the defense of Mariupol and the steelwork plants there, where you had what was considered to be a developing humanitarian crisis at the time, and it had the world's attention because civilians were stuck underground, and you even had an Oscar-winning documentary about those events called 20 Days in Mariupol. And that's going to be the focus of what we're really talking about today, is the power of the documentary and why everyone should watch at least one Ukraine documentary, because you are just not getting the real story out of this war if you're only trying to collect news from your favorite news sources. Certainly not just your favorite news sources, but if you are not casting a wide net on Ukraine, you're not getting the full story, and you're seeing something that looks like another conflict that if we don't push away from it, that will get bogged down in it for years. Well, what's really going on is a completely different kind of war, even a completely different kind of war from what you may know about or may not know about in Gaza. And Gaza steals, not unjustly sometimes, from the situation in Ukraine, but sometimes the comparisons are either too close together or too far apart. And I could do a whole video on the vagueness of what I mean by that. But Gaza is a collateral damage zone for the most part, with people being starved and people tightly compacted into a small little place, and the casualties of civilians are way higher. But as the world tends to think, any civilian in the way of a bomb is being bombed on purpose. that is just so often not the case with modern warfare. However, in Russia, it is the case. Civilians are being bombed and targeted at a personal level. You'll see that in the documentary Kherson Human Safari, which we've promoted here before. But you'll also see it in the way that this war in Ukraine has to be fought. When people say it's like a World War I type warfare, not really. In some ways, the only thing missing from a war of attrition of that nature is the deadly chemical warfare. And you've seen some indications that Russia might be considering reintroducing that. But it isn't really a type of warfare where you've got trench line to trench line, and one trench is firing at the other, and then you've got to cross a no man's land. Everyone's familiar with that style warfare from World War One. No, what you have in Ukraine warfare is a sort of dugout by dugout. They call them, they're translated as dugouts in from Ukrainian to English. But what you have is little holes that all over the place in basements of houses, and these little holes, they get in little hidey holes and rabbit holes that are very quickly dug. Battle of Iwo Jima style from World War II. If you don't know what I'm talking about, really research that battle, because the war in Ukraine is more like that than World War One, where one side may even have sort of tunnel systems set up a little bit, but they're very crude, and anybody who's attacking has to kind of dig, and you go inch by inch. And nowhere have I seen that or understood that better than the recent documentary 2,000 Meters to Addivka. It's by the same director who directed 20 Days in Mariupol. Hopefully I'm saying that right. But I went to a screening of it last night. That's one reason I chose to not do the podcast, because this screening was right at the same time as my podcast. But director Mstislav Chernov has already won an Oscar for 20 Days at Mariupol, but 200 Meters to Addivka is next level. You've got soldiers with helmet cams, and if you've ever watched a war movie and thought, this is the most personal, the most graphic war movie ever, you don't expect a documentary to feel a little bit like a war movie where you're seeing the up close and personal fighting. Usually when you see a war documentary, all the fighting is distant, and you have you kind of get a sense from aerial photography that here's some tanks moving there. You've got maybe some fighter jets that were caught on video, like in 20 Days of Mariupol. I think there's some fighter jets fly over, and Kherson Human Safari, there's a fighter jet that flies through and bombs a building, and but there's a certain distance between what you can shoot and most war documentaries. There's no distance here. Soldiers are equipped with helmet cams. They're saying their real raw emotions They're not lines, but what you're finding is that there's a visceral hate. There's a one thing you never see in war movies is one side yelling and cursing at the other side, and them understanding each other. Usually one side is speaking a completely different language than the other one. Excuse me. There's a cat trying to get into this room, and he or she will not be denied. What? All right, this is my producer, Melody. Come here, Melody. You want it in here so bad. You're going to get some screen time. My producer, Melody. She is saying, I got to hurry it up. That I probably sound slow and lethargic and rambling, and that's because I'm not really prepared as well as I should be. But sometimes, what I was prepared to talk about is just kind of gone out the window for me wanting to talk about this movie. And now here comes the other cat. Well, here she is. There's my producer and my dang it. All right, Bruce, you want in too? Come on. So the cats have decided to join us. But I wanted to talk about this film because it left a huge impression on me. And thank you to the Ukrainian Cultural Society of Frisco for hosting that screening. But 2,000 meters to Addivka is haunting. It covers almost meter by meter the fight. You get to know some of the real soldiers in this conflict, and you get to, unfortunately, feel for their loss when that happens. There's an overall feeling of futility to the battle, and yet the soldiers refuse to give in to that futility feeling. The journalist himself is like, I don't see an end to this. And he doesn't see an end to it, and the reason he doesn't see an end to it is he plays news clips of Western media talking about the war in contrast to what it's like to really fight it. And the way people talk about the war is such this distant thing where, everybody wants to negotiate it like it's a real estate deal. And that's not even just that isn't a shot at our current U.S. politics. It's a shot at the way the world thinks about this thing. They think about it in terms of, Ukraine promised us a summer offensive, and oh no, they didn't do very good. I guess we shouldn't help them. Relying on the country that is being invaded to prove that they can fight to get more help when they've already proven that they can fight time and time again. And they've proven incredible sacrifice, and even their own citizens are worried, who's going to be left at the end of this thing if Russia's willing to throw away 3 guys for every one of our soldiers just to maintain what they have. eventually even our soldiers are going to run out, and there was this feeling of Russia might never run out of soldiers, but they will. They will run out of resources, but only if the world makes them. And I think when you look at this documentary, if you're an American who's watched Afghanistan war and Iraq war media for the past 20 years, and you're thinking that war in Afghanistan and this war in Ukraine look anything alike, then this documentary will shatter that for you. Absolutely shatter it. And you'll understand that with the drones and the digging of the holes and people screaming at each other in languages that they understand, and guys that surrender from the Russian side being asked, why are you here? What the hell did you come here for? I'm a 19-year-old who, when I was 19, when I joined the military, all I wanted to do was go be an engineer somewhere. And now you've got me fighting on the front lines. Why are you here? And the Russian soldier says, I don't know why we're here. That should, if you watch that, if enough people watch that, you understand why this war is winnable for Ukraine. Not just winnable, but they will win eventually, because the resolve is in their soldiers. But not only is the resolve in their soldiers, but if the rest of the world really understood that standing up to this kind of this essentially propaganda driven war, and standing up to it with truth like this documentary, and standing together with things like no-fly zones and things like being willing to mass troops in Poland, and things like sanctions that are effective and long-standing, especially against the Russian oil and gas industry. Those things, and the Pepsi company not doing business with Russia anymore. Maybe I put talking about that too long in the podcast, but Pepsi, the corporation, has 2 plants in Russia, at least 2 new plants. But Pepsi and Doritos, they know that their product is they're not sending money directly to the war campaign. But what happens is, and they know this happens, you do business with Russia, the government taxes your company heavily, and those taxes go towards funding the war. So that's why most normal companies do not do business with Russia anymore right now. And there's this sort of little small side campaign of propaganda to say that doesn't matter one way or the other, that Russia's economy is still fine. But it's not. The people are feeling it. People are getting frustrated. And you want them frustrated, because even though they don't have a say in their government, eventually someone has a say. Go see the documentary 2,000 Meters to Addivka. I'm going to share the website Unlike some of the documentaries that I've posted on this channel and talked about, this one is this documentary is not available for free anywhere in the public space. It's not available on YouTube. Hersan Human Safari is available on YouTube. I believe 20 Days in Mariupol is available on YouTube. But 2,000 meters. If I keep saying 20 meters, I'm going to take a shot if it's that time of day for you, or take a sip of your coffee and get yourself another coffee, because this service that I provide is free, and the only thing that helps me out is if you'll subscribe on YouTube to my Slava Heroyam podcast channel, or subscribe on Substack. Appreciate all of you who are followers of this channel. We have a very small following of somewhere between 50 and 100 people, and that number can grow. I don't expect to be the most famous podcaster in the world, but I will connect you to other ones who do this professionally all the time. So stay tuned. I get to talk to a lot of these folks. All right. So 2,000 meters to Addivka. I want to look at their website a little bit and see where there might be screenings, upcoming screenings. Those November 6th, those are the ones that I went to today. You had Round Rock, Frisco, and Oklahoma City. I kind of wish I had promoted that on social media a little bit more. We got one, if you're in Tucson, Arizona, I know some folks in Tucson, Arizona, the Loft Film Festival. Get out there this weekend. November 7th in Bogota, Colombia. I've been to Bogota. Hola, Bogota. ¿Qué más? I don't know if any of my Bogota friends are following my podcast. But Budapest, Hungary, Amsterdam, Netherlands. Boy. And then November 14th with, hey, don't chew on that, producer. So I'm sure this documentary will become available to the general public in time. There was a bunch of past screenings. They're screening it all over the world. But man, do a lot of people need to see this. PBS distribution. I want to tell people how you can see it. I guess you got to go to film festivals right now, or because we've missed the screenings. You can watch the trailer here. Man. This movie is coming. It'll be. I don't know what the world of documentary is like, but there's must be a period where they just do screenings, and then let's see if we can find 20 Days at Mariupol. Is that something that you can do? I think that is something you can just go watch online. Frontline. because I have not watched that yet. Yep. So eventually, this 2,000 meters to Addivka will be available for everyone. It must need to get through the award season, because what gets these documentaries press sometimes is all the awards they get. And eventually it should end up on things like Netflix and streaming services like that. But if you can find a way to watch the website closely, it's something everyone needs to see. And when it comes out to be available, I'm sure I'll repost my review of it, but it is haunting. You're going to feel for a little bit like you are right there on the front lines of a real war. You're going to be confused whether or not you're watching a war movie or real life. And when you keep reminding yourself that it's real life, that these aren't characters, but real people, real soldiers, and their cries of pain, and there's no script. The movie opens right away in a hectic battle where, these guys they need to get the hell out of there because things aren't going well. They try to get into a armored personnel carrier. They all get into the armored personnel carrier and it gets stuck. And they have to get out of the armored personnel carrier, and they're just losing guys one by one, including the guy you're following eventually, whose helmet cam you're following. So that's all I'll talk about with 2,000 meters to Addivka today. But keep a close eye on it. Go see it. If there are more screenings of it, I will definitely promote it on all of my social medias. We are almost at the 30-minute mark. Let's talk a little bit about the heroes of the week. And last week, look at that, it's me. All right. Where to share my screen instead. All right. Oh, I stopped sharing any screen. All right. Share screen. Add to the stage. All right. Trying to think if this is how you can just get to my Substack. I guess you have to do @Travis Hightower. Little @ symbol. Yeah, that works better. Okay. Apologies if it doesn't seem like there's, unless you're listening on Spotify. Travis, it should be at Travis Hightower. Some of you that would be listening on the way to work might be already at work. Add banner. All right, so as you can find, where I do most of my writings on these heroes of the week is at Substack at Travis Hightower. Very simple. The writing ref also still works. When I originally started the Substack, I didn't. I was planning on connecting it to my YouTube channel, the original one, which is just for fun. But here he is, the first gentleman I want to talk about. At the time, he was Major Dennis Propenpenko, and he was the commander in charge of the he was the commander in charge of the Azov Brigade. I talk about in this article how twice now Ukraine has faced an Alamo type situation, but I feel like they probably face an Alamo situation, as in remember the Alamo, as in the famous battle in Texas. They probably face that situation every other week, if not every day, on these front lines. But one of the more famous ones from the beginning of the war, when everyone was paying attention to the beginning of the war, was the Avastal steel works, where you had a lot of civilians caught in the crossfire and taking shelter from the Russian advance. This guy was the commander in charge of that defense, and he kept those civilians alive. He got them out of there. He got his wounded soldiers out of there. And eventually he had to surrender when he really didn't want to. He was going to fight to the last man. But orders from the nation came down, and now he not only commands a brigade, but he commands an entire wing of the Ukrainian military as a colonel. He was a major at the time, and his deputy, who we'll talk about in a second, was a captain at the time. So young junior officers, 3 years later, senior officers by war. But these guys are, soldiers by trade. They sought out and joined the military, whereas a lot of folks are the kind of soldiers that you hear about in Ukraine of never wanting to be a soldier. But these guys were warriors at heart through and through. And his big goals now are Western support, because he feels like this war would have been won by now with proper Western support. And it makes him very angry that they haven't really gotten it. And, it sounds like solve your own problems, but they did their part to solve their problem. They are the richest, Ukraine is, of the former Soviet Union nations, but they are still, despite how much the world relies on their agriculture, they were still rebuilding a nation from the Euromaidan to separate themselves from Russian influence. So they are one of the poorer full European nations. And look what they've done against the might of Russia. I don't understand how people don't see when you talk about, and this is my anti-propaganda plug for the day. When you say Ukraine can't possibly win because they're fighting the mighty Russia, and Russia has limitless resources or whatever, which they don't. If they were gonna lose against the mighty Russia, they would have lost already. I mean, it's a simple logic of that. And if they were gonna lose against the mighty Russia with even with U.S. support and with Western support, they wouldn't have taken back what they took back. A lot of people still forget how much of Ukraine was conquered and how much has been liberated. Even the documentary 1,000 meters to Addivka is a bit pessimistic about that, because all the fighting you see for that movie, Russia retakes Addivka anyway. I don't remember if it's 5 months later or a year later, but the point is of really not the big geopolitical thing, but the individual soldier on the battlefield and what they fight for. And when these guys understand exactly what they're fighting for, and the Russian soldiers that come there have to end up saying, I don't know why I'm here, man. Not an apology per se, but I think every Russian that sent thinks they're going for one reason and ends up realizing that it's no reason at all. So big tangent on that, how this ties in, but this guy's still fighting. And the Azov, what I want you to understand is they aren't committed to any one location along the front. These are the plumbers. These are the guys that when there's trouble, when it looks like when there's trouble, we'll be there on the double. These are the guys that are quickly redeployed to different locations. Ukraine is sort of fighting a defensive war, trying to win the propaganda war right now. But since they're fighting a defensive war, it's the Azov, and it's five battalions that are the flexible unit that flexes from different place to place. And if Russia starts to make a gain, they send in the Azov and knock them back. And this gentleman is still in charge of all that. He was a prisoner. He was returned in a prisoner exchange, and something that is very rare in Western culture is the prisoner exchange. But even rarer is the fact that you can be a prisoner and then be returned and then fight again immediately. We haven't had that since World War II. And the only reason we had it in World War II is because prisoner camps were liberated. It's a traditional thing of Slavic and Eastern European culture to use prisoners as a bargaining chip. That's why when these prisoner exchanges of, U.S. professional athletes for other Russians that are held here, I don't think Americans understand that is a cultural thing for Russia, and that Putin has actually returned to it. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing that Russia has returned to the prisoner exchange, but for these soldiers, it saved their lives, and they're still fighting and commanding. But the prisoner exchange is a really interesting thing, and maybe I should be prepared to do an article about it or write more about it. But it is, it was taken away by Stalin. So, the Russian instinct was to try to trade prisoners with the Nazis. And Stalin said, no, if you get captured at all by the Nazis, you're a traitor to our land. You deserve death. And so a lot of Soviets who were taken prisoners during World War II could not return home. And if they could return home at all, if they didn't just die outright in the camps. So that contributed to a lot of the Soviet Union's great losses, which included Ukrainians. This gentleman had a deputy, and here's his deputy. I call him the viburnum of the Azov. His call sign in Ukrainian, when I try to translate it, means viburnum, which is a type of white flower. So hopefully that's an appropriate title, because his real call sign is a Ukrainian word that means that. But look at this guy. Hezgeth was talking about, I guess you can have beards on special forces, but this isn't special forces here. This is Ukrainian regular military. Look at that nice trimmed beard. The only time that it's scraggly is when you're holding out to the last man in a steel plant and telling the world, we need to get these civilians out. That's what he looked like. But that's what he looks like when he's now a lieutenant colonel there on the left. But this was the deputy commander, and really same story, but professional soldier. But his story is one of the interesting things about him is he was involved with Mariupol from the beginning. It was his assignment. It was both their assignments. But something that he ran effectively is the training of civilians in Mariupol. And this picture of civilians being trained on the good old Kalashnikov. My producer doesn't like being trapped in here all of a sudden. These civilians are being trained a week before the invasion. So Mariupol civilians sort of understood that a storm was coming. And they wanted to be trained and wanted to be ready. And I think I may do a reaction next time to some of 20 Days to Mariupol, because if I don't have anybody to interview with me, but right now I don't have a complete schedule, but we're going to be pushing for a screening of Kherson Human Safari, trying to get it set up in the Dallas area at a couple different possible locations. So stay tuned to that, and stay tuned to my social media for that. But this is why Ukraine's going to win. These folks didn't know for sure if an invasion was coming, but they saw the storm brewing and they wanted to be ready. And I'm sure a lot of them became professional soldiers from them, but that's the story. Is that is people every day have to leave their hometowns, they leave their colleges. Um, I'm not ready with it, but we'll have it next time. There's been a lot of young women and young kids, the age of my kids, uh, killed by terror strikes. Children too, but terror strikes, but also on the front lines. Normally I have so not ready with that. I'll be ready with that next time. But the dwindling of the Ukrainian population is not something like 17,000 civilians have been killed. And not by accidental attacks. It could be a lot more if Ukrainian defenses weren't what they were. So the one thing I don't have prepared quite yet is the organization of the week. But I want to remember some of these organizations. Durham Humanitarian. We've talked about Project Conaston. This is the project that goes and rescues civilians from frontline locations. actionbeyondwords.org. Paracrew Humanitarian Aid. We had a person heavily involved with this humanitarian organization on 2 weeks ago, Charlie Morris. Blue Check is an organizer, a spoke, if you will, on the wheel of many organizations. Wingmen for Ukraine, always good organization. Not only do they help with supplies and medicine for civilians, not only do they help with evacuations, they help the individual Ukrainian pilot be ready with their bailout kits. They help them with the newest equipment, make sure they're ready to fly with good G suits, with good helmets, ready to fly and fight. Ed's Friends funds surgeons, tries to get foreign surgeons into Ukraine, but also aids mostly the Ukrainian surgeons that are already there. Give UAO was one of the very first podcasts that I did. And bpcusc.com. So if you're watching this on YouTube or Spotify, rewind, give some of those websites a look. That'll be our organizational pitch for today. I think it is involved if you are really, I think it's important if you can to arbitrarily study a little bit of the Ukrainian language, a little bit of the Russian language, understand how different they are, and why they're more different than Portuguese is to Spanish, but at the same time related for different reasons. Encourage you to study the history of Ukraine. All right. Like I said, that'll be our podcast for today. Look forward to news on a screening of Kherson Human Safari. We'll have make sure to have a organization of the week, um, a new one that hasn't been on our show before next week, and we'll be doing this show every Friday morning now, so you can listen on your way to work. I'm thinking that might be a better time for live listeners. I don't know if it's a better time for guests, so guests might be pre-recorded, but we will see. We'll find out how that will work. But as always, glory to those who protect the Constitution of the United States. Slava Ukraini and Heroyam Slava.